Okay, what you're about to hear isn't easy, but it's necessary. Joining me now is Jaco Bujans, someone who spent more than 2 decades fighting sex trafficking. Jaco, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kim. It's an honor to be with you.
There's so much to dive into with this, but first, let's start off with how big of a problem is human trafficking in the United States? I think a lot of people, when they think of trafficking, they just think of other countries. It's not happening in the United States. They see these high profile cases. They think it's just these sort of richy rich celebrity and high profile sex rings, and those are just few and far between. But what is the actual real problem? You're calling for courts to be set up in every single state, so it sounds like the problem must be pervasive enough.
Yeah, and Kim, you always have such a unique angle on the stories you cover, so I'm very excited about covering this issue with you. Let's just paint a canvas real quick. For us, this marks 31 years fighting human trafficking. 1994, my sister's trafficked. She was 12 years old. She goes and is trafficked to the music industry, ironically, for 6 years. In 2001, we start realizing how prevalent human trafficking is in the United States. Today, we are the leading nation purchasing sex from women and children on earth. There's not another nation on earth that has commercialized the sale of human beings more than the United States. Very bitter pill to swallow for the land of the free, the home of the brave. Globally, annually, it's a $152 billion industry, predominantly selling women and children. 52 billion of that 150 plus billion is inside the United States. A
Wow.
third of the world's consumption. Remember, it's a crime of supply meets demand. So the demand is so vast. There's not a single county or zip code in the United States where human trafficking cases have not been reported. It's so prolific in our culture because of the ways and the means by which traffickers operate. There was a time, Kim, in the early 2000s when it was predominantly kidnapping. Now, only 1.7% of the crime is kidnapping. Up to 47% of the crime is perpetrated by the caregivers, where families and
Mm.
significant members to a family, a coach or a teacher, a familial figure, it's called familial trafficking, is the perpetrator. Children do not go missing. They stay at home. So much of it is through technology. What used to have to happen in what we would call grooming or desensitization would happen in person, now happens online. So there's so much of these factors, so many of these factors that contribute to proliferating this crime. And then you have this juxtaposition where you had a country that didn't want to talk about human trafficking at all. In 2010 and 11, we didn't have specific laws on the books, believe it or not, until 2015 for minors of trafficking. And then Congress did its job. It codified the law, it criminalized the enterprise, it funded 41 task forces around the country, it's funding awareness campaigns and programs. And then you start seeing great California, for instance, great laws on the books against human trafficking. Texas, maybe the best laws on the books in the world, but no prosecutions. You start seeing some high profile cases of saying, well, wait a minute, if the Epsteins get away with it or their client list, nobody's talking about Sarah from Paducah, Kentucky, that's rescued 2 weeks ago. She doesn't get limelight. Her case doesn't get high profile reporting. Those cases just don't make it to court. The laws are there. 30 years sentencing for a child, for a predator, a pedophile that abuses and sells a child, 30 years. You're not seeing these cases go to court as human trafficking cases. And so now, with that landscape, it's so vast. I mean, I'll give you statistics: 300 children sold on the streets of Dallas every night. Every night.
300 children a night?
300 children a night. This is the Attorney General of Texas's numbers. Our numbers are more egregious. 76,000 children in circulation, not new children, but in circulation of actively being sexually trafficked or exploited in Texas alone. The numbers are so vast. Tens of thousands of minors and women, men and boys too, and boys are on the rise significantly. I'll talk later about why that is. But predominantly still women and female children are being sold as sex slaves, forced through force, fraud, coercion, to perform for either love and belonging, shelter, safety, whatever that is, right? What that reward system is. And we've only had 148 federal prosecutions on sex trafficking in the last 2 years.
If you don't trust Big Pharma, you're not alone and you're not crazy. That's exactly why Children's Health Defense exists. Founded by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., CHD is one of the few organizations fearless enough to take on the medical industrial complex. They expose the lies, they investigate the conflicts of interest, and they fight back through relentless legal action, independent research, and public advocacy. Whether it's vaccine safety, environmental toxins, or the explosion of chronic illness in kids, CHD is asking the tough questions and demanding accountability. This isn't just a nonprofit, it's a movement. But they're up against trillion-dollar industries, captured government agencies, and a media machine that works overtime to silence them. And they don't take money from the very institutions they're exposing. Everything they do is funded by people like you, and now more than ever, they need your help. If you believe in medical freedom, truth, and protecting children, now's the time to step up. Just go to childrenshd.org, donate, and give whatever it is you can. Your donation helps fund lawsuits, research, and advocacy that challenge the system and demand real accountability. Every donation, big or small, fights for our kids, our rights, and our future. So once again, head to childrenshd.org, donate, and fight for medical freedom. Wow. Okay, break this down for us a little bit more. So you're saying that up until what year we didn't really have laws against human trafficking in the books? You said like
For
20
minors. So
for my
2015 is the year that marked when we said now we have specific codified law separating minors from adults. So when you listen to the P. Diddy case, the charges were RICO, racketeering, human trafficking, and they charged with force, fraud, and coercion. Very big subject that America doesn't understand.
Mhm.
The law today, across all 50 states, the law today says that we do not have to prove force, fraud, or coercion with a 17-year-old and under. Those laws did not exist until 2015. Trafficking was trafficking. And we dealt with a minor the way we dealt with an adult. So some minors were charged with prostitution.
Oh,
And we said,
jeez.
well, you can't charge a minor with prostitution. And we said, well, there's no room in the law to differentiate. And so it took a monumental effort by so many NGOs and Congress from 2005 until 15 to say, wait a second, we need a separate set of laws for minors, 17 and under. And then those laws are now they're in place. Now, on Diddy, they had to prove force, fraud, coercion, 18 and over. But then there's these giant gray areas where a child is sex trafficked at 16, and all of a sudden, one night, she turns 18, and the law changes for her. Once victim, by default, now you're not. Now you got to prove it. Now you got to face your perpetrator. So there's gigantic gaps in the judiciary on how the laws are adjudicated. And so we've done so much work making laws. And politicians built their careers on making laws. They pass a law and they get reelected. But no one's following up saying, but is the law enforced?
Mhm.
Does it actually make a difference for the victim, the survivor in court? Does this case go to court as a human trafficking case? What happened with Sean Combs? The Friday before the jury read their verdict the following Wednesday, the Friday before, they dropped 50% of the human trafficking charges. I can tell you why. And then the jury comes out and they find him not guilty on human trafficking. They drop RICO, right? And
Mhm.
it's a lesser case and they plead it down. It is so dismal, Kim, that at the moment, up until 2020, the numbers were only around 47% prosecutions against sex trafficking in America at the state level. 47% of the time, we got a verdict of sex trafficking. Okay, when the charge was sex trafficking, the only 40, now it's down to 16%. The crime is exploding up. Prosecutions are going down. I told you only 148 prosecutions at federal level, but tens of thousands of people trafficked. You looked at Sean Combs, and where's the justice for the victims of those the women? The justice for minor and adult victims of Jeffrey Epstein, those cases don't make it to court.
Hmm.
Those who buy, who pay for access, for sex, they never go to court. They're never cross-examined. They don't get put under oath in front of a jury. So it's like Billy the Kid goes down, Jeffrey Epstein. But what about, surely, if he's prosecuted for sex trafficking, it means he sold a product, being a human being,
Right.
to someone else. Well, then there's a buyer.
Right.
Now they want to tell you there's no buyer. But
Right.
he's prosecuted for human trafficking. Ghislaine Maxwell, she's prosecuted for human trafficking. She sold a product to somebody. Is because the judiciary has not been paid attention to. We haven't forever looked and saying, are we failing in the courts perhaps? And if you look at the failure of family court, there's holes in family court in this country like Swiss cheese. And you then look at human trafficking, it is the judges have no chance because they don't know the crime. They're not specialized in this, Kim. We get to a place in our society where we realize that certain things take specialty. I'll give you an example. 1978, the judiciary in the US say the following: we actually don't understand bankruptcy. We don't understand bankruptcy. The judges don't know M&A deals, tag along, drag along clauses, puts and calls, call options. We don't know how to rule when two business partners are at odds. We need specialty bankruptcy courts. So we got specialty bankruptcy courts
Mhm.
because they said this is very sophisticated, infinitely less sophisticated than a sex trafficking victim, and the psyche and the abuse and the trauma. The judge has no chance to know each case is unique. No two survivors are alike. We're now having survivors that are victimized by their peers. You've got 16-year-old traffickers in our country.
Yeah.
You've got a very high number of teenagers in America that are walking felons. How are they felons? They're distributing child porn. So the judges and the prosecutors are looking at this landscape saying, we are so outmatched for the level of the crime. We don't know how to build this case and take it to a judge that understands the case. So we're going to plead it down. So over 90% of the cases get pled down to a drug charge, a kidnapping charge. What did you see with Sean Combs? Transportation, quasi kidnapping across state lines, but not human trafficking. Now, the law in the state, California may say, if you're trafficking a 13-year-old, you're going to get 30 years in jail. The judges are scared of these cases. They don't see enough of them to have enough acumen and
Mhm.
expertise in these cases. The prosecutors don't know how to build these cases because they're highly sensitive, because the victim can't necessarily take the witness stand. It's a child. And testimony, et cetera, et cetera. Or if it's an adult, look how difficult of a time they had with Cassie Ventura or Virginia Giuffre, right?
Mhm.
So they plead them down because they want to get some kind of a charge. Normally, it would be kidnapping, illegal firearms in a vehicle, paraphernalia, drugs in a vehicle, or transportation for prostitution, right? But all you need to ask that victim, Cassie Ventura, is okay, if Sean Combs transported you for prostitution, did you give consent to be prostituted in a different state? And Cassie Ventura said to the court, I did not give consent. But they broke her testimony by asking her, well, did you ever give consent to go to a freak off party? And she said, well, in the beginning, yes, because she was in love with Sean.
Mhm.
And the judges don't know how to handle that. Well, you were in love with him, but now you're a trafficking victim. They don't understand that over 85% of all legal prostitutes in Nevada, in the state of Nevada, those prostitutes, over 85% of them have filed human trafficking charges and rape charges.
Mhm.
Because in the moment, if the child doesn't have to say no. That's taboo. But if the women, let's talk about adults, says, I'm not consenting in this moment, she's not consenting. Well, you consented yesterday. You're a prostitute. And no, I'm a human being. I'm a human being
Yeah.
with rights and liberties in this country, and I can choose to not consent right now,
Right.
right?
Right.
Therefore, we need specialty courts where the judges are trained. They're informed by the top NGOs. They understand best practice. The prosecutors are informed. The judges get cross designated where they can apply state law at state court or choose to take the case into a federal court. They have wraparound services by NGOs that are the best in the business that support them, like SCOTUS, get supported by amicus briefs, by experts in the industry.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're doing here.
Right, okay. So I think what I'm understanding is that, uh, I think part of the issue there's a few things that I think are the issue with this. It's one, I think the vast majority of us are just not seeing it, right? I mean, you're saying that there's hundreds, thousands, hundreds of kids in Dallas, Texas alone that are being trafficked every night, right? We're hearing that thousands of people are being trafficked. But, I lived in Los Angeles, California. I've lived in these big cities. I never saw, this is I think part of the problem with the
Yeah,
psychic, right?
absolutely.
I never saw, I don't even know where you would go to buy. It's like, where would you even begin to go to procure a person or a child for sex for the night? Like, I don't even know where you would go. I don't know how these people find each other. I'm not seeing people on the streets. I'm not even seeing hookers on the streets, really. I mean, maybe I just never went to the right spot. I don't know. But I think a lot of people, they're oblivious to this because it's not in front of them. Unlike, for example, gang violence in a city, you might
That's
go to
right.
a certain part and you see graffiti and you see that the place is dirty and you're seeing homeless people all over the place. And it's very visible that there's a problem with this corner of the city. But
Yeah,
when it comes to sex trafficking, I mean, obviously, it seems like people would be hiding, especially child sex trafficking. So we're not seeing really any of this at all. And so I think there's a visibility issue, right? People out of sight, out of mind. They're just like, I just don't think this is a
true.
real thing because I'm not
One of the
seeing it
biggest
at all.
challenges. Yes.
Okay. Then, secondly, I think a huge challenge is the consent issue and when victims are then, what the things victims say after the fact or during, when they're being interviewed. And I could see where this is a challenge for the courts. It's also a challenge for just public opinion. For
Mhm.
example, in the Andrew Tate case, like the Tate brothers case, right?
Sure.
They've been accused of by numerous women of sex trafficking. But a lot of people defend the Tates and say that is not out that didn't happen. There's no sex trafficking whatsoever. Just listen to the victim, listen to the so-called victims, right? And these women will say, they'll dig up text messages of them maybe even there's like the victims are inconsistent in their testimony. There's also the question, a lot of people will say, well, it's not, look, you fell in love and you chose to do what it was you wanted to do with this person. You fell in love with them and that was your choice. Then you're a consenting adult, and with being an adult and you consenting, that can't possibly be a crime. I mean, I think obviously with a child, there's a huge difference there. I think that most people agree children cannot consent to this type of, but then again, in various different states, there are rules that actually do allow children, 16 years old to have sex with an adult. So as long as the age gap is a certain amount or there was consent, there are states, it's not cut and dry. It's a lot of people think that children are children under the age of 18, and that's not actually the case state by state. So,
When it comes to human trafficking, the law is pretty clearly delineated, and they've done, again, state laws and Congress have done a really good job over here to solve those gray areas um, within the law. But
okay.
again, a law that is not followed and prosecuted is as good as toilet paper. Let's
Yeah.
address some of the things you addressed real quick. The most ideal human trafficking victim is a victim that lives under your nose in daily life. There was a time, if you look at Terrence Howard in the movie Hustle and Flow, where your pimp was in a mink coat and he drove a Cadillac and you drove up to the red light district and you flashed your lights twice for one type of customer and your lights three times. Those days are over. They're over because that crime is easier to fight. So today, you say, where do predators go to buy? On Instagram, in DMs, on YouTube, on Snapchat. The number one platform used by predators to groom young boys is Discord in live gaming, where they play live. Well, Yaku, how do you traffic a kid on Discord? You have to gain proximity. It's a game of trust. It's no different than dating. Anybody that's watching this, the first time they go on a date with a boyfriend, the boyfriend probably reaches out and tries and takes the girl's hand, and he's measuring her. Does she keep her hand there? And if she does, she wants me to hold her hand. Then I hold her hand. If she pulls her hand away, I got work to do. I have to walk slower. That's predatory behavior in a predator's mind. They reach out to a child softly. This is not kidnapping. They don't show up and say, you were forced, you're going to perform sex today. On average, a predator online will invest 9 months in desensitizing a child. What does that mean? Earning trust, earning proximity. Most of the children will fall into a love and belonging phase. Do you know that the number one tactic used by predators today is emotional support?
Hmm.
It's love and belonging. If you look at Gen Z and how desperate Gen Z is for emotional support, so a skilled predator speaks the language the child wants to hear. And often it's not even talk, they just like. Here's this scenario. I'll give you a scenario. Call her Sarah. She's 13. She plays soccer. She doesn't make the team. She talks about not making the team online. A predator recognizes a heart hurt. She really wants to make the team. He recognizes her sister as a D1 player. Her dad shows up to all her sister's games. This is a real case.
Okay.
So this predator just started liking all her photographs of her and her friends. He's in the community. He's not pretending to be 14. He's a grown man. One day he shows up at a soccer game. He flies 2 states over. He takes a selfie of him with her in the background. He doesn't say hello. He leaves. A week later, he sends her the selfie and he says, I want you to know when your father won't show up, I will show up. What is he doing? He's earning the heart of a 13-year-old that is desperate. He's earning trust. She writes to him in her DMs, next time say hello.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you could check out Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.